The company was quite small when I joined. We were 6 and then went to 7 and stayed there for a while. There was a feeling of pioneering.
A small group of dancers with one vision took over the world artistically.
That's incredibly modern. The idea that you could do more with less.
The work from the 60s is of a time with a smaller company, in smaller rehearsal studios for smaller stages, you know.
The company grew in numbers and the pieces got bigger, as did Paul's collaborations with other artistic luminaries.
You know, one of the things Paul always talked about being an artist, he said, we all hung out together. You know, I hung out with the painters, the sculptors, the actors, the playwrights, the poets. Some of Paul's greatest works are the collaborations with Alex Katz. And that was a genius relationship.
And it led to some of the greatest pieces in all of modern dance.
I have to say, like, I'm so obsessed with that, like the treatment of that footage, the movement that you put into it, right? One of the like most amazing things about collaborating with someone you really trust is that you only have to come up with 10% of the thing, right? Like I knew what I was trying to get across when I constructed the audio edit, and I knew I had a solid story, but then to see all of the care with which you took to figure out what the like that looks like a 60s television, right? Like it was extraordinary to see, because I couldn't have imagined it in my wildest dreams.
I wanted to show this progression through time through what the technology was at the time, or not even the technology, but what the tone was of the time, right? Or what the tone of what they were saying was. So there was two different things that I really kind of responded to. One, when I was looking for music, I was like, I love that music because it's so kind of classically clumsy. And as we know from starting up something, like you trip along the way, you stumble, but it's like this kind of excitement that it's exciting, but it's also kind of slightly clumsy. Yeah. And so it was, I love that music because it gave me that sense, but it was like this exciting journey that they were going on. And then to your point about the movement of the film, I just kind of wanted it I wanted slides, like a slide projector, but like, how do you represent that in 2020? And like, it's just that flowing of the slides, but also like giving that exciting, like internet kind of movement.
Oh, I love that. Fun insider fact, by the way, for all of y'all watching. This is my favorite thing. The actual original, I can't even talk about it. Audio edit of that section was like, whatever Michael says, that's so beautiful. Like, you know, 1 man, 8 dancers, and a truck took over the world. But all we had were photos of this plane. And we were like, it's fine. And then John Tomlinson was like, why are we saying truck and seeing a plane? We were like sneaking back out of the edit. Sorry about that. Take it out.
Yeah. I was like, do you happen to have any photos of Paul Taylor on the back of the pickup truck? No, they didn't have it. So we were able to splice out that audio.
Roll that footage, Natalie.
We had the good fortune to be in these masterworks.
This is so beautiful.
Inside some incredible painting.
Our most famous work, Esplanade, you know, Paul acknowledged, you know, he saw a woman running down Houston Street after a bus that left, and he thought, that's great.
I remember certain people that would read what we would write for grants or for letters and stuff and be like, don't call it pedestrian. It's not pedestrian. I was like, right here in the book, he calls it pedestrian. He calls it pedestrian when he talks to me. And he was like, I'm the one that made it. I'll tell you what it is. Some of the greatest works that people cherish were, say, from 75 to 1991 or 2. The hits kept coming. Pieces like Sakura and Ardencourt and all these pieces that are so meaty.
There's a lot of dangerous stuff in Paul's work. There's a lot of tricky partnering. There's a lot of death-defying moments.
When something is exquisite, that step had to be right next to that other step in time and space.
He was really interested in what made people laugh. He thought it was really important. He's like, hey, if people are laughing out loud, at least I know they're paying attention.
I have been in performances where audiences walked out. We were doing Speaking in Tongues. It's basically a work about a religious community in the end of this intense, dramatic, religious cult setting. They all kill themselves so that they can have the ecstasy of connecting to God. And audiences left. And I remember us after the show were like, that means we're doing our job.
This section still makes me tear up every time I watch it. And like, for me, as I was like putting the audio together, it didn't understand until we did this, which was like a good month and a half into working with Paul Taylor, how deeply this company understands the human experience and that way and the breadth with which they understand it through the humor, and all these examples of through the humor, through the tension and pushing back on what people think is acceptable to watch or what art is, through the beauty, through the dangerous elements. Like, it's so all over this work, and hearing them all talk about it, I was like, I just want this section that really, really highlights that. It's funny that Esplanade section is the only story, the very first story that John tells, the only thing in this whole piece that was in Dance Maker. They tell that story quite frequently. But then the piece that Lucy talks about afterwards about writing grants, that's why I wanted to do this, because like those pieces of information are so deeply personal, right? And sometimes get cut out of a carefully curated documentary or whatever. And what a treasure for us, those of us who care about this company, to get to hear these like amazing personal insights into like even things as mundane as like how they were writing grants. It becomes really interesting.
And particularly right in this time. That's what makes it so much more like this time that we're like living in right now. But like where so many companies are like struggling to survive, right? I find like the process and like the care and the love behind people trying to make sure that their institutions survive, right? Yeah. I also wanted to say real quick, speaking in tongues, the piece that ends that particular movement, I thought it was so touching when Michael talks about, because I think we've all been there, right? We've been in at least one situation where we piss somebody off or offend somebody in the art that we do. And like,
I've only done it once ever, just so we know.
I do it quite a bit, I think. Yeah. Not in my art, but just like in my words.
Yeah.
But just like, but right, it means you're doing it right. Like you're making somebody feel. And I thought that was such an important sentiment, like in regards to like the work that the Taylor Company does and the work that Paul created, was doing it right.
Yeah.
Yeah.